Today, many people view Zionism negatively, and not without reason. The deepening Palestinian-Israeli conflict, the ongoing atrocities in Gaza, and the ever-expanding settler movement seizing Palestinian land in the West Bank have all contributed to that perception. A good example is this young Jewish-American lady and what she has to say about Israel under Netanyahu. Watch.
I wasn't gonna say anything, and I know I'm gonna get hate for this, I know, but I don't care anymore, because this isn't even a political issue anymore. This is a human issue, and my heart is breaking for Palestinians right now. They're being brutally and viciously attacked by Israeli forces. Look, I'm an American Jew. I wear my Star of David proudly. I love being Jewish, but my love for Judaism has nothing to do with the Israeli government. I think they're atrocious and disgusting for what they're doing right now. Two-state solution doesn't work because Palestinians are marginalized, their land is taken away from them, and their lives are taken away from them with that. Binationalism, one land for all people. Not that that will ever happen because the Israeli government is corrupt, in my opinion. You know, Palestinians and Jews, ethnically speaking even, we're not that different. Anyways, my heart is breaking.
But I don't believe Zionism, as originally conceived by its founders, was inherently evil. The early Zionists were driven by a desire to find a safe haven for Jews who had endured centuries of anti-Semitism and persecution across Europe and beyond. At its core, Zionism began as a secular political movement, not a religious crusade. It emerged in the late 19th century and was rooted in European nationalism and Jewish survival, not biblical prophecy. The Zionism of the early 1900s was a far cry from what it has become today. One of the most misunderstood and contested aspects of Zionism is this: was it ever truly a religious movement, or did that framing emerge later? And if so, from whom? Modern political Zionism, launched in the late 19th century, was explicitly secular in origin. Theodor Herzl, the father of political Zionism, was a secular Viennese journalist who didn't speak Hebrew, barely knew Jewish texts, and proposed a Jewish homeland as a political refuge from rising anti-Semitism in Europe. Early Zionist leaders like David Ben-Gurion, Chaim Weizmann, and others were largely socialists, atheists, or agnostics, motivated by nationalism, not messianism. To them, Zion was not a divine promise. It was a practical solution to the Jewish question. In fact, before the modern state of Israel was established in Palestine, the Zionist movement seriously considered, and sometimes debated, other potential locations for a Jewish homeland, particularly in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. While Palestine remained the spiritual and historical ideal, political realities forced some early Zionists to explore other options. Among the alternatives, British East Africa, commonly known as the Uganda Proposal, was the most famous. In 1903, the British government offered a chunk of land in what is today Kenya, not Uganda, as a potential Jewish refuge. The idea nearly split the Zionist Congress.
This territory, Mr. Herzl, offers a temporary haven.
A haven, yes, but is it Zion?
Argentina was also considered, due to its vast underpopulated land and its openness to Jewish agricultural colonization, supported by philanthropist Baron Maurice de Hirsch. These territorialist debates reveal that Zionism was once far more pragmatic and flexible than it's often portrayed today. Meanwhile, traditional religious Jews, especially the ultra-Orthodox, rejected Zionism outright. They believed that only the Messiah could re-establish a Jewish homeland, and that any human effort to force redemption was blasphemous. Groups like Neturei Karta and many Hasidic sects continue to oppose Zionism on theological grounds to this day. That said, religious Zionists did exist, though they were a minority. One of the most important was Rabbi Abraham Isaac Kook, who tried to reconcile secular Zionism with divine purpose. He saw secular Zionists as unwitting agents of God's plan, helping to prepare the ground for redemption, even if they didn't realize it. His theology laid the groundwork for the messianic settler movements that would emerge decades later. Interestingly, the idea that Zionism was a fulfillment of biblical prophecy was more deeply embraced by evangelical Christians than by early Zionists themselves. Christian Zionism dates back to the 19th century British Empire, when Protestant leaders like Lord Shaftesbury pushed for the restoration of Jews to Palestine as part of a divine end-times scenario. This theology intensified in the US in the 20th century, especially with the rise of evangelical dispensationalism, which saw the founding of Israel in 1948 as God's hand moving in history. Key figures like Jerry Falwell, Mike Pence, yes, the former US Vice President, and John Hagee framed Israel's existence not just as national survival, but as sacred destiny. Ironically, Christian Zionists often support Israel more fervently and more theologically than secular Jews themselves. So when did Zionism become religionized? After 1948, following the Holocaust and the founding of Israel, many religious Jews began to reluctantly accept the state as a practical reality. The trauma of the Shoah, or more commonly known as the Holocaust, shattered the belief that Jews could afford to wait passively for divine rescue. 1967, the Six-Day War. This was the real turning point. The Israeli capture of East Jerusalem and the Western Wall was seen by both Jews and Christians as divinely orchestrated. It rekindled messianic fervor, galvanizing both religious Zionists and Christian fundamentalists. 1970s and onward, the rise of religious Zionism. Movements like Gush Emunim, Bloc of the Faithful, began settling the West Bank, believing they were reclaiming God-given land. The territories of biblical Judea and Samaria were no longer just strategic buffers, they were sacred inheritance. Religious Zionism became more militant and messianic, fusing nationalism with biblical entitlement. This formed the backbone of today's settler movement, much like the Christian nationalist surge in the US during the Reagan era. In America, with the rise of the religious right in the 1980s, Christian Zionism exploded. Leaders like Jerry Falwell, Pat Robertson, and John Hagee preached that the return of Jews to Israel would lead to the rebuilding of the Temple in Jerusalem, which in turn would trigger the second coming of Christ. This theology led to unconditional support for Israel, often more extreme than that of most Israelis themselves. In short, Zionism began as a secular political project, rooted in European nationalism and Jewish survival, not divine command. Religious elements were layered in later, often as post-facto justification or under the influence of external actors, particularly American evangelicals. Today, the most passionate religious narratives about Zionism often come not from Jews, but from non-Jewish Christian Zionists who see Israel as central to their apocalyptic worldview. Religious Zionists now dominate Israeli politics, led by figures like Itamar Ben-Gvir and Bezalel Smotrich. And U.S. support for Israel is increasingly theological, particularly among right-wing evangelicals. Even secular Zionism now borrows biblical language to justify modern policies, especially when it comes to settlements and annexation. The irony? Zionism began as a European secular survival movement. Over time, it absorbed religious narratives, first internally, Rabbi Kook as an example, then externally, mostly by American evangelicals. Now, it's a tangled hybrid, a modern nationalist project cloaked in ancient divine language, used by ultra-Orthodox settlers and American Christians praying for the rapture.